What's up, guys? Let's talk WrestleMania for a minute because, as you know, I'm a lifelong wrestling fan. So when I assess football, basketball, all these different sports entertainment sectors, I use wrestling logic to, I invoke wrestling logic to come to a lot of my assessments. I wanted to cover this video because although I don't cover wrestling, you got all these people that cover wrestling. There's a lot of people that watch wrestling, enjoy it, and obviously, this Rock return has a lot of people confused. If you're a wrestling fan, if not, like I said, we'll be covering sports and all that stuff. But figured couldn't hurt to get this in there. It's also very, very interesting the timing. These things always seem to happen, right around the Super Bowl wrestling. Weird stuff with wrestling happens. You got the McAfee Rock connection. I can go all into how Rock brains represent, San Francisco, both rocks from California, all that stuff. But I more just want to go into a basic booking that I feel like a lot of people are missing, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm overthinking it. But again, it's how I access football, so this might give you like a little bit of a, I don't know, idea of how I assess football and the rationale I come to. So here we have The Rock returned, and a lot of people are not happy. And again, for me, it's a hard call here whether this is a work, as they call it in wrestling, which means they're setting something up to swerve people, or a shoot, in which case, which is basically something that's not really planned. They just go ahead and do something that is wasn't in the cards. And Roman was in the cards years ago, but obviously as of late it's been Cody. Now he returned and they basically pulled the same, NFL steals from WWE. So WWE, what they do is they pipe in crowd noise. They do a lot of interesting things. They'll change camera angles. They will plant seeds, create trends that aren't there, just to have try and lead the WWE fans in one direction or another. It does not work with wrestling fans, and this is why, for me, it's easy to snuff out. Like again, calling Patrick Mahomes an underdog. They're trying to pitch them as America's team. Nobody's buying it. Like nobody in the world is buying that the Chiefs are America's team. People were like in the Lions for that kind of role, not the Chiefs. So like they tried it in the NFL, but just sticking here, I think it's a pretty simple formula. If you know wrestling and you've watched it for a little bit, there's an interesting tie-in here where again CM Punk literally left the company because The Rock returned, and Punk had busted his ass. He was a bigger draw as far as wrestling. More people wanted to see Punk, and while The Rock always is going to do good ratings as far as like a WrestleMania show because you have so many people watching WrestleMania internationally, and to be honest, every WrestleMania event just seems to outdo the one prior. But big names are going to draw. For example, Donald Trump, people might not know this, Donald Trump versus McMahon was one of the top, uh, as far as ratings, as far as gate, performing WrestleManias of all time. Now, does that mean Donald Trump is a better wrestler than Hogan and should have taken his spot at WrestleMania 3? Absolutely not. So, it's a weird argument, but there's something that I have not seen people mention. And to me, it is, and again, this is, I gotta be fair, seems like WWE is copying the NFL a little bit here. In the past, the winner of the Rumble, it was already set. We knew in January who was going to be main eventing WrestleMania in April. And it'd be like watching the playoffs, and I mean, we knew, if we're being honest, but, for the people that think it's real, if you know who's going to be in the Super Bowl when you're watching at the beginning of the year or when you're watching beginning of the playoffs, something like that. So, for the first time in a very long time, and really the first time ever, WWE is setting a precedent where we really don't know what's going on at WrestleMania. We think we do. So what happened, if you're not too sure, Cody wins the Rumble, which is like a team winning the AFC Championship, and then turning around and saying, you know what, Niners, we would like to beat you, but we're going to go ahead and give the opportunity to the Patriots. They haven't been around in a bit. They haven't been too good. But Patrick Mahomes decides to just hand it over to Mac Jones and leave. But it's a better example would be Tom Brady. Tom Brady comes back for the Patriots even though they had a losing season. And Mahomes, since he has won the AFC Championship, says, you know what, Tom Brady and the Patriots are going to be fighting you, not me. Now, of course, it's not the best example, but if you're a wrestling fan, I think you can follow. So what's interesting is this was the most disliked video in the history of WWE YouTube, and you might say any publicity is good publicity. Tell that to the Vince McMahon stories. Any publicity is certainly not good publicity. Now, WrestleMania is in Philly. What's interesting about that is the last time The Rock got like booed out of a stadium was in Philadelphia, and you can't make this up. It would be 10 years to the day. It was at the Royal Rumble, so maybe not 10 years to today, but pretty darn close. And he got booed out of the stadium because at the time they were pushing Roman Reigns, who nobody wanted to see, and The Rock. They thought, okay, again, The Rock has a very big ego, so him and a few others had this bright idea. He would come out, help Roman Reigns win the Royal Rumble against this other guy. I think it was Rusev, that was up and coming at the time, who everybody wanted to win. And The Rock looks shocked. You should watch the video; it's pretty funny. This guy he's like, I don't know, he's like a politician. He obviously is not liked. And back then, people still liked The Rock because he hadn't proven himself to be a compulsive liar yet. But he was absolutely shocked when the crowd just booed him out of the stadium. And this was Philadelphia, where he's going to be wrestling Roman Reigns, where he just took Cody's spot. Now he's just announced as a top member of the board of TKO. So all of the insiders, I don't follow these goofballs. I have better predictions than them. But your Dave Meltzers, if you've heard of them. Your Dave Meltzers, your Adam Schefter of WWE, okay? All your guys like that are saying, oh, well, it's to distract from Vince McMahon. They've wanted Rock Roman for a while. CM Punk got hurt, so they threw things off. All these different, possibilities. And again, these guys have been wrong from day one. These people said CM Punk was never returning. These people said Cody was going to get booed and be a flash in the pan. He remains their top merch seller outside of CM Punk. They're number one and number two. And if you didn't know, number three is the greatest of all time, Steve Austin. Rock's not in the top 10. So the fans have spoken clear. So the WrestleMania might do better. But if you recall, Punk left the company because this happened. Now you finally have Punk back. Everything's good. Fans are happy. And not so much anymore. And again, 10 years ago, WrestleMania 30, Daniel Bryan, literally, the fans had to hijack the show and start chanting his name. So again, it'd be like watching the Niners Chiefs and all the fans are chanting for the Lions. Just chanting, let's go Lions or something. Because they're so tired of it. And I think that might start happening in the NFL soon. My point being, I don't think the WWE is this tone deaf. And The Rock, while he's very delusional, he's very much an egomaniac, and he would not want to be disliked, booed, or put in a position where people are not going to be happy with him, which is going to happen here, and it's already happening. So, whether The Rock was a schmuck sellout or not, this was going to happen. Now, again, there was a very interesting story that happened years before this, and you guys might have seen it. A lot of times wrestling ties into politics. This Occupy Raw movement, and this was when, and again, this was choreographed, okay, because fans can't just get in the ring. But basically, every single show is being hijacked by people just chanting yes. It made its way into football, and they were chanting for Daniel Bryan. Anytime Randy Orton and Cena, who were supposed to be fighting at the time, went to talk, all you hear was the crowd start overpowering them with Daniel Bryan chants. Sometimes CM Punk chants because, again, CM Punk was never forgotten. So that was that. So anyway, CM Punk, the original pipe bomb, years and years ago. I'll let YouTube correct that, or Google correct that. You guys could always check that out, June 27th. And we could just read what he says because it'll be a lot easier. And he goes into how John Cena right then was like what Roman Reigns is now. Fans were getting tired of him. All credit to Roman Reigns. Fans aren't really tired of him. They're tired of the story, so that's a nice distinction. Whereas with Cena, they were tired of him. They thought he was being pushed down people's throat. And as you can see, CM Punk had a lot to say. Basically, he was leaving anyway, and they just said, fair play to Vince, Triple H, all the guys that made the call. Just go out there and speak your mind. So as you can see, he went into how he doesn't dislike him. He hates this idea that he's pushed. And it's very interesting when you get down here. You're as good as kissing Vince's ass as Hulk Hogan was. I don't know if you're good as Dwayne. He's pretty good ass kisser, always has been, or always was and still is. So CM Punk again, he never. This is why people love or hate the guy. He never minced words. So basically, he said what Cody is probably thinking right now, and he goes out of his way to call Dwayne, an ass kisser, and it's known that he's a Vince guy. So a lot of people are saying this is a distraction from the Vince news, but bringing in a Vince guy that Vince built up and that The Rock has a much closer affiliation with makes no sense. People don't think of Cody and think of Vince McMahon. When you think of Vince McMahon, at least me, I think of Undertaker, I think of Hulk Hogan, I think of The Rock, I think of Austin, I think of all the guys that Vince worked with. So he goes into all these different things, and Paul Heyman, which is interesting, he's again part of this very storyline. You can see how it all ties together. And then, he ties some kayfabe into it, which is wrestling speak, which is basically the fake aspect when he's like, I'm going to leave the belt. And then here he goes again into these brass rings, basically saying that you'd never really get a chance in WWE. Kind of, again, like football. You can work as hard as you want, but it's going to be the same people that are chosen. And he goes into this. And again, it's very interesting when he goes, and trust me, it's not sour grapes, but the fact Dwayne's main eventing at WrestleMania next year and I'm not makes me sick. So they're running this same thing back, only, again, when they did this, they wanted The Rock. They did not think it was going to have this ripple effect that lasted years between CM Punk and then Daniel Bryan. And now, coincidentally, CM Punk's back and he's, quote, injured. And again, in wrestling, you never know, just like football. But I think it's a fake injury because I think they're copying football here, and again, it's a rarity. Usually, it's the other way around. But everyone expected Cody Rhodes. He won the Rumble. He's going to challenge Roman, and CM Punk is obviously going after Seth. They were going back and forth ever since Seth came back, and now all of a sudden, people are convinced we're going to get no Punk. We're going to get Cody versus Seth and The Rock versus Roman. So my theory, just the theory I have, and you'll see here they'll go into this. One will never know, but most people are saying CM Punk's Pike Bomb is pretty much a shoot. It was real. So, again, we'll never know exactly to what extent. But I genuinely believe that what they're going to do is have us believe that Cody is out of it, as you can see. And it talks probably a lot about the controversy, but how The Rock's in hot soup. So you can see people are, again, not happy with it. Roast The Rock for taking Cody's spot. So I genuinely think what we're going to get, I mean, it's pretty bad. You even had Logan Paul coming out saying we want Cody. So for the people that have been, because a lot of people have told me, like posted on my different sports videos, just like going over WrestleMania, who do you think's gonna win? Vegas still has lines for Cody versus Roman. Now that might not mean anything, but I genuinely think they're doing an orchestrated swerve here. And again, I haven't seen it mentioned by anybody. And again, I think it's because I guess a lot of people just watch wrestling and they assume we're gonna get what we've always gotten, and it's an ever evolving industry, just like football, which is why reassessing is never easy. Again, this I never really went out with a video. I just did this one because so many people have brought it up. But I think what they're doing is they're going to find a way to get Cody versus Roman and Seth versus CM Punk. I think they just want people not positive what the card's going to be. Because what happens is then between January or February and in April, people don't really watch. They just wait until WrestleMania. So they don't watch the story, they wait till WrestleMania. And again, that's why, in my opinion, this would make no sense just to have The Rock win. Or he's definitely not winning. There's no way this 52-year-old guy who got winded, I can't make this up, he got winded getting to the ring to the point, now maybe he wasn't supposed to speak, but he couldn't even talk. He got to the ring and you could just see him puffing air. It was like a fish out of water while Reigns is making all these great faces. So another interesting thing and this is just the delusion of The Rock. Roman Reigns is 6'3". It's been established. The Rock swears. He swears up and down. He's 6'5". They've asked other wrestlers after they retired how tall they go. Oh, are you really as tall as? They asked the Undertaker if he was like really 6'11". He's like, nah, I'm about 6'9". They asked Shawn Michaels because he was always listed at like 6'1". He's like, nah, I'm like 5'10". And Shawn Michaels has an ego. Even Hulk Hogan came out and said, now he gave a reason. He said because I dropped my leg so many times doing that leg drop, I was 6'9", and now I'm like 6'6". I've lost like 3-4 inches on my height. But it's laughable that this guy still swears up and down that he's a natural, for one, and two, that he's 6'5". Reigns is clearly taller than him at 6'3". So again, the delusion of The Rock is not the reason I don't think that he would totally come in here and take the main event. Again, they made a reference last year about how Austin is the only guy to main event across like 4 decades. He did the 90s, he did 2000s, and then he did the 2020s. So he did across 4 decades. Austin main evented at WrestleMania, and when that happened, I was like, "Oh, The Rock's gonna make sure to beat that record," because The Rock can't talk about a main event he was in without bringing up how it was one of the top grossing ones. Now, again, he only mentions the ones that did well. Like, he'll ignore the main events he was in that were not top drawing ones. Again, this guy is the guy who literally lies about going to In-N-Out Burger for the first time about once every year. Uh, that was one of those videos I saw just circulating, and it was pretty funny. This is a guy that lied and said that pride was wooing him in a period that it couldn't have been possible. So anyway, if they were going to do this and have just Rock versus Roman and push Cody to the side, and there wasn't some kind of swerve at play, there's just no chance that they would have had Cody win the Royal Rumble, because they know they would have been opening the floodgates to this exact issue with Daniel Bryan happening and all these different things. Back when CM Punk should have been the guy and he wasn't. Now, if Cody just didn't win the Rumble and say somebody else did, like Drew McIntyre, and he fought Seth, and then somebody got into a fight with Cody, anybody, it could have been. It could have been just any. It could have been LA Knight turning heel. It could have been a million things. A returning guy, and then you have Rock and Roman. Fans would not have given it this kind of negative attention. The reason fans are so bummed about this, again, it's really no different than, again, it gets wrestling. So I think they're the same, but people accept that wrestling is more scripted than football. I think football's more scripted. If you listen to the promos, there's always insider baseball stuff that they'll let us know in wrestling, whereas football they don't. But my point being, there's just no way they would have let Cody win the Rumble. And you could see they're actually saying The Rock pushed for this, like he was just hell bent on having this match. He thought it was best for business, a business again that he doesn't care about. So there's no way they would be this tone deaf, even if they thought The Rock was the biggest draw in the world. And I mean, outside of Trump, I guess you can. A couple years ago, you could have made that argument. I don't think you can now. But again, for wrestling, if you're someone who doesn't watch wrestling, then you're gonna know The Rock before you know of Cody Rhodes. But again, they're trying to appeal to their own base. It's not like they're reaching out to a new base. It's not like a Taylor Swift situation where they're going to be bringing in new people. The people that watch are the people that watched when The Rock was in the ring. So, and they're the very same people saying this is just a joke. This is, I'm not going to watch. All these different things. And again, people saying I'm not going to watch might not make a difference. But in the long term, again, you will have serious long-term ramifications, like losing 25% of your viewer base for the next year or two if you pull the trigger on stuff like this. Because again, people don't understand. You have to look at the metrics, and every metric has people watching because of Cody. When The Rock returned in Denver, this is how bad it is. He got a very lackluster reaction, like nothing like Cody. And again, it was a return, which is always going to be a nice pop. Really nothing crazy. This one was so bad, crowd noise was piped in, and you can tell. You can always tell when crowd noise is piped in because the fans will be motionless, but you'll hear the place somehow blow off the roof. And they actually edited out where they were chanting for Cody, and we did get a Rocky chant that was legit. You could tell, you could see the fans in unison, but they muffed out the Cody chant. They also muffed out fans screaming "This is not awesome," which is pretty funny. Usually they'll chant "This is awesome," and they were clearly chanting "This is not awesome." But of course, like when the not part hit, they kind of piped in a little bit of noise, but you can hear very loud and clear, and the numbers speak too. So my point is, again, this is nothing crazy. If you can do a bet on this, it would be nice because it's going to be hard to find it. Again, my book is still offering Cody versus Roman. So it's not like you can pick who's going to fight at WrestleMania, but if you could, it would be a good take because I'm sure even Vegas might have, if they had that kind of match, like will The Rock fight Roman Reigns at WrestleMania or will Cody fight? I would venture to say Cody's going to be the guy fighting. They could do a triple threat deal. People were talking about the symbolism. WrestleMania 20, WrestleMania 30, they did a triple threat where they put an underdog that people wanted to see in the match. In both cases, they won the match. So we could see something like that. But I just wanted to go into it because I thought it was interesting. You can see that they've been talking about this for a bit. And again, it's just as far as Rock and Reigns, people are not happy. And again, when it was 10 years ago, it was they were booing because they didn't want to see Reigns. Now people are fine with Reigns. They don't they just want to see him fight somebody that has some stakes to it. Not a guy returning to put over his cousin, and that's all The Rock's doing here. So yeah, I think it's just worth bringing up that it's an ever evolving industry. Just like everybody quote knew Cody was going to win at WrestleMania last year because that's what they become accustomed and conditioned to. I think they're just changing the way they book things, and it's a good. I think it's a good thing because again, if you enjoy watching the show weekly, just like if you watch football weekly, you expect, if you're a fan and you think it's real at least, and you expect what something that happens one week to play a role the next week. If a team wins in the wild card round, you expect to see them in the next round, etc. And this kind of swerve, in my opinion, would do nothing. The only thing it does do is yes, if people are talking about wrestling, this is going to now be front and center, not McMahon. But even still, doing the swerve is what's stealing the news from McMahon. Just having The Rock fight Roman isn't going to do anything. It doesn't matter if Roman fights Doink the Clown. It's going to be the same deal. They've already accomplished a new, most highest, whatever you want to call it, ratioed headline for a YouTube video in a long time. So I just wanted to go into this. I know I have a lot of wrestling fans who watch the channel, and I've gone into The Rock myself just because, again, I grew up just a wrestling fan, a naive little kid that watched it, and I always thought The Rock was just dandy. He seemed funny, he seemed humble, he seemed like a cool guy. I watched his movies when he started with The Rundown. But then as I grew into, my teenage years, whatever, adulthood, it was very, very easy to see that this guy was a complete phony. You could watch Cena bury The Rock on a promo. I think that's like the YouTube. It's like Cena buries The Rock. Punk buried him. And that's another thing is The Rock does have an ego so big that I could buy this, and I think that's why they're going with it this way, because The Rock. So just to put in perspective, Cena returned, and what he did in his return was he fought Solo. That's The Rock's cousin and Roman Reigns' cousin, and Solo's up and coming, but he's certainly not a mega draw. But he's a guy that they're building as a top force to be reckoned with. And Cena had one of the biggest beatdowns he suffered in his career. He just went out there and Solo decimated him. Cena hasn't been back since. That's what, they call passing the torch. That's what they call doing the right thing in the wrestling business. The Rock has returned, and it's like every return, he just spits in the fans' faces more. And he refuses to be a bad guy too, which makes it even more delusional because if he came back as a bad guy, he would get so much heat. You could see people are unhappy with him, and he's being pushed as a good guy. So it kind of reminded me of the Chiefs, to be quite honest, who I think are going to lose, and I think The Rock's going to lose. Again, Roman, San Francisco is his favorite team. Now you got two guys basically. Again, that rep California, but it's a weird one because The Rock's from California, moved to Miami, reps Miami, and Roman Reigns is born in Pensacola, Florida, but reps San Francisco. And that's why I went into earlier this year. People brought up Dolphins, and I said, yeah, I could see something because Tua and a few other reasons, but I said I still don't think it's enough. But wrestling has its tie-ins, that's for sure. Maybe next year we see something like Miami, Philly, something like that, because again we have this is going to be taking place in Philly. Wrestling seems to do some kind of Project Looking Glass stuff with football. It's hard to explain, but a lot of commonalities. So yeah, I wanted to address it because it wasn't. I didn't see one person bringing up this possibility like on the wrestling side. And I had a couple minutes. We we'll be doing more Super Bowl videos, but obviously I've done a million of those. I just did my NBA playoffs video. Oh, and I was off on that, by the way. I checked like 3, 4 days ago before I did my simulator, and the Hornets were like 4 or 5 games out. Now they're like 10. So I'm guessing they went on like a 3 game losing streak when the Hawks went on their 3 game winning streak, something like that. That would explain it. Something like that happened because someone brought up to my attention. They're like, yeah, the Hornets are doing way way worse than you thought. And I checked and I'm like, oh yeah, they're like 9.5 games back. So yeah, it'll be a long run for them. But Ball is returning, so I still have my eyes on the Hornets. You know, it only takes going something like 7-3 in the next 10, assuming Ball returns. And you never know. Again, I think the Hawks. I think they're going to wind up trading Trey or one of these guys. We did get him on our last pick. I went into how of all the NBA games, the Hawks versus the Warriors looked like a complete trap. The Warriors just pounded them, and then Hawks are 3.5 point favorites. So that one seemed pretty simple. But anyway, I thought I'd cover this for the people that watch wrestling that are just like, what's going on? This makes no sense. I think that's what we're gonna get. Just a swerve where they bring in, the most delusional egomaniac in all of probably in all of Hollywood, and now everyone knows. Oh man, The Rock, he would totally do this. If it was anyone else, people might not be able to buy it. Like they wouldn't. I don't think people would buy Steve Austin or Brock Lesnar, who apparently Brock's in some hot water right now. There's a lot going on with the Vince scandal, which again is weird that The Rock's being the guy because he is one of Vince's. Him and Vince were, you know, tied at the hip for the longest time. But yeah, you can let me know what you think. I think it's a swerve. I think it's some NFL kind of booking where they're trying to get us to suspend our disbelief going into WrestleMania. So we don't know for sure. Oh, it's definitely going to be these guys. The next 2 months don't matter. We know Roman's not dropping the belt. All these different things. Whereas now, it's a much different dynamic. And then in February, I think late February, early March, they might start teasing some deal where Cody gets into the match or CM Punk starts teasing a return and wants to fight Seth. And then we get what everyone knew we were going to get a few months ago: Seth and Punk and or Roman and Cody. I also see people saying how it might be like Rock versus Reigns night one, Cody versus Reigns night two. I don't see how that would work, to be fair, because that just kind of leaves Seth sitting out in the cold. I don't see, like, unless again Punk returned and started something up with him, and then Cody couldn't fight him, and then he's like, all right, well, I'll fight Reigns night two. There could be a few things they do, but something about this just seems like if they did book it this way, then WWE, in my opinion, might be in some serious trouble just because it took them a long time. And maybe because AEW is gone now, it's like Madden when they just got lazy when 2K went out of business. WWE did that once they bought WCW. They bought WCW and got very lazy. They buried guys that could have been top stars like DDP and Sting never got a chance. All these different things people remember if you watched. And they just basically were flexing that, we don't need to compete and we have these guys that we're going to push no matter what. In this case, that could be what happens, but you have other, AEW is not dead yet. And in my opinion, this is like the biggest way if you're going to get people to flip over to AEW. This is the way to do it because it's like taking WWE back 10 years. So after they did this last time when they were doing like, I don't know, 3 million ratings, they dropped to under 2 million for a while. And even now, sometimes they have a hard time doing over 2 million. So this could drop them between 1 and 2 million, in my opinion, if they do go through with this. I don't think again, you have people talk about the casual and the hardcore fans. I think the people that have been watching for a long, long time don't really care either way. Whereas the people that just started watching a couple years ago, and they're really into Cody and LA Knight and Jay and all these new people that are finally getting pushes, and now you got Punk back, and there's so many guys. It's just a Goldberg situation or a Hulk Hogan situation where you're bringing a guy, a middle-aged, and again, nothing wrong with the guy's age, but in wrestling years, when you start getting close to Social Security age, you would hope that person would understand that their better days are behind them. So you never know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I wanted to bring that up. It's unfortunate we can't do wagers on it because I would love to just wager that Cody's gonna fight Roman. I'm sure it would be plus odds because again, it's you could bet on anything. If you don't believe me, I'll go through my sports book where we can bet on aliens, which I don't understand that one because it's like who would win a war between the aliens and humans? And humans are minus 400. So it's like, okay, what if I pick the aliens and they win? Are they going to pay up? Like, it's so goofy. So I don't even know why they have those props. By the way, we're up to like 190 Taylor Swift props. What dress is she going to be wearing? How many times is she going to clap? Will she kiss Taylor or Travis Kelsey? Who will be standing next to her? It's pretty ridiculous. Then they have these like over unders. Like how will there be more Kelsey touchdowns or Taylor Swift Grammy win? Nomination. It's pretty funny. But my whole point is, if you can bet on this, and then again, Cody's minus 500 to beat Roman right now. But of course, if that's not the card we get, then that bet's going to be voided anyway. But if you can bet, especially with this new information, maybe something will come up, and they have like who's gonna win the this one's the undisputed championship. Cody will probably be getting plus odds if he's on the list because, or who will be the next champion, something like that, because The Rock's not beating him for sure, and I have a feeling we're gonna get that matchup. So again, unfortunately, it's not an exact, for me at least, wager I'm seeing. The only wager I'm seeing is, again, this might be a giveaway, just Cody versus Roman, which is still the wager. So even after this announcement, Vegas is still showing that on my book. But I thought I'd bring it up. I thought I'd go into this. I enjoy wrestling, so honestly, I like to cover it more because a lot of times people wanted me to cover the Rumble, and I just was covering so many different sports I wasn't able to. And I'll cover WrestleMania. I did cover WrestleMania last year. But this is a story that a lot of people are just very confused on. Even non wrestling fans might be wondering what's going on here. So I wanted to go into basically the prelude, how 13 years ago this was a problem. And I can't imagine that they're not going to see it as a problem now. And it's very funny that, you can see WWE and they're not going to care as much about the piped in noises and the fake ratings and all the things that they do to try and convince people that somehow fans are okay with this. But it's even funnier when they do it in football and basketball because they do it in football and basketball all the time. And they just do it to different extents. But I do have to give the NFL credit. This is a situation of definitely WWE copying sports where they, in my opinion, don't want people to immediately know I'll call it the playoffs, the road to WrestleMania, all the matches, everything that's going to happen. Sure, you need a build up, and that's why they do it in football. They'll build up these rivalries without making it obvious. Mahomes versus the world. We already went into all Mr. Irrelevant versus the undeniable goat that's playing all these different things. But in wrestling, they do the same type deal now. It seems like where they want it where you're not going to get what you think you're going to get, and then they do these swerves, just like a movie, just like any kind of production spectacle. So that's basically it. I thought I'd go into it. If there is a wager you can make on it and get plus odds, I would definitely jump on it. As far as again, if it's something to the deal where like, will it be Rock versus Roman? I'm sure it's going to be more people saying yes because it looks so obvious. It's basically been announced. But again, Cody versus Roman was announced, so it wasn't announced, but they all but announced it. I mean, when you have a guy win the Rumble and then point at the guy he wants to fight, there's not much else you can do. And then come out the next night and say, I still want to beat you for the belt, but this guy's going to handle it first. It just doesn't make sense in my opinion. So a few people asked me to cover it. I thought I'd go into it, especially because we have this little bit of a lull period now between, we still got a week till the Super Bowl, and, I just don't want to be redundant. I mean, if people want me to go into the Super Bowl some more, I will. I'll definitely have videos as we get nearer because there'll be more information. But, we have like 25 videos dedicated to why the Niners are going to win. And I'd have to look into the symbolism part, to be quite honest, because I find it interesting. Again, you have, again, basically a San Francisco guy now and the tribal chief. It makes it a lot more interesting, in my opinion. And again, it's going to be who's the real tribal chief. I already did a video on that. And now I guess there's three arguments. Is it The Rock, is it Cody, or is it Roman, right? So I think it's interesting. I think the whole thing, the timing's interesting. I went into the McMahon scandal. I still think that's a distraction from Epstein. And this is what makes it even crazier. Months before, and maybe this is just like a complete power play by The Rock to do whatever he can to like distance himself. months before McMahon got sued, and I pulled it up and went into the article. If you want to see my Vince McMahon scandal episode, video, not episode, I go into how The Rock was sued for the same thing essentially for kidnapping and all these ridiculous charges. They were just laughed off, and the person was called a kook. And it's basically the same evidence. I haven't read all 60 something documents of the McMahon one, but it's basically just a bunch of insiders saying, "Yeah, McMahon did do it. I'm innocent." And it is the text messages that are, again, I can't see anything from Vince's side yet that's been confirmed, that's been investigated and confirmed to be his. So again, I'm not saying he didn't do it. What I am saying is it's very weird The Rock got this exact same lawsuit. It was laughed off. The person was completely dismissed. But here, when it happens with Vince, it's a Me Too moment. We're going into a political year. Rock comes out as a Democrat, and does in my opinion, the phoniest endorsement I've ever seen of Biden. Tells us we all got to get jabs, all these different things, and you could tell it didn't sound like The Rock. It just sounded like he was being told what to say. And people went into it deeper. They're like, "Wow, I didn't realize how much controlled the guy was until I saw him on Rogan, and he was stuttering with every response he gave essentially because it's like he can't talk unless he has a script." Which is another thing John Cena pointed out, how he actually has to write his promo notes on his wrist because he can't remember them. Again, not really relevant to anything, but it's an interesting full circle moment with Cena, Punk, Bryan, Cody, Rock, Roman, just with some different actors. So yeah, not too much again as far as wagering that could be done here, unless your book has some cool odds, like I was going into possibilities. Then you're probably going to get some plus odds. But I thought I'd cover this. Again, there's a reason I use The Rock as my when we were standing on the field there as my for my channel brand. It's because this guy is the complete epitome of just, I think, fooling the public. And I think people are starting to see it. Years ago when I was bringing this up and I brought up, I had nothing to gain by saying that I think The Rock's a liar and doesn't care about anyone but himself. All these giveaways he does, he makes sure there's a camera. This guy wouldn't give a homeless guy a cigarette without pulling out his camera to get it on Instagram. Like, that's just the kind of person The Rock is. And yeah, I think people are starting to see that part. And maybe it's purposeful. You hear about penances and how people, they do it in wrestling all the time where he wrestles, like, gosh, Shawn Michaels literally was in the middle of the ring and kissed Vince McMahon's ass. He literally did that after being called to kiss ass for years. So it's like they do have these weird penances for guys. They get rewarded, but then they're also kind of shamed. And The Rock's kind of taking a licking right now. He really is. And I can't imagine this is the way The Rock wanted this main event to go down. So again, if it does go down that way, it almost seems like a deal where it's like, all right, if you want this main event, we're going to show you going out there and taking it from Cody because that's the kind of guy you are. But I think it was more of a business deal. And again, as delusional as The Rock is, I don't think WWE is that tone deaf that they would allow possible, 10 to 20% of their fan base just maybe not watch the show. And again, it's not like a boycott situation. It's a situation where you want to keep ratings. You want to have people continuously watching, and this just is not the recipe for that. It's also not the recipe to get new people into it. If people weren't watching The Rock 20 years ago, they're not going to be watching him now when he's, again, getting out of breath just trying to get down to the ring. And it wasn't like he ran to the ring. He took his sweet time. He made sure he showed us his goosebumps on camera, which he always does, and by the time he got to the ring, it looked like he had been through an entire match. So, yeah, I'm curious what you guys think. I know a lot of people were curious what I thought, so I thought I'd put that out there. And I'll be covering the Super Bowl, all that stuff going forward. But I thought I'd cover wrestling because, again, my channel's called National Sports Entertainment for that reason. I always try and invoke wrestling logic. So again, sometimes it's harder to predict wrestling than it is to predict football, which might be a giveaway as to how scripted football is. But this one I wanted to keep primarily with wrestling. I'll go into what I think is symbolism with The Rock, with again, the tribal chief, with where they're from, where they rep, what it means for Purdy and Mahomes. It's all interesting. I can't see it changing too much, but you never know. And yeah, you last, again, it's just a weird thing. Last Super Bowl, Philly was in it. This WrestleMania is in Philly. The Super Bowls prior to that were Los Angeles and Tampa. Tampa won, Los Angeles won. That's where WrestleMania was the year prior and the year after. So I think it could be some giveaways. So maybe Philly does pretty good next year. Maybe that's what this is getting at. Maybe the Samoan quarterback Tua does really good. So we'll be looking into all that. But obviously, we want to make sure we get the Chiefs Niners right. Again, I still like the Niners. Not much is going to get me off them. But I just wanted to go into a semi, for me, an in-depth breakdown usually goes over an hour. But a semi in-depth breakdown of what I think we're getting. I think we're going to get Cody versus Roman still. Unless the entire thing is just so Roman can pass Hulk Hogan, another guy they want to kind of get out of their history books. So Roman beats again. Cody doesn't have to be in at WrestleMania. Again, it'd be weird if he didn't, but I could certainly see Roman just winning, The Rock leaving, and then Cody coming back for SummerSlam. Again, you run the risk of people just not watching if that happens, which is definitely a possibility. But again, it's not because I want to give The Rock the benefit of the doubt and say he would not come back and ruin a 2 year storyline. That's just a horrible thing to do. But again, they always say if you're offered the money, no, apparently The Rock's the one who pushed for it, so he wanted the money. But either way, if you can get the money, if you can get yourself a very good gig, who wouldn't take it? You always hear that. So I'm not going to shame the guy like a lot of people are. I'm just giving my honest opinion. I know, again, I know how The Rock is, so I'm not that I know the guy, but again, here's a supposedly 6'5" guy standing up to a 6'3" guy, eye to eye, and of course, it's just ridiculous. The Rock wears lifts and shit too. You can tell by the boots he wears, and it's definitely a guy that would do this. But on the other aspect, I just don't think the company would go through with this. So just wanted to let people know. Maybe if you're a wrestling fan and you're like, man, this is so dumb, because there's again, I look at football and I'm like, man, how can people get so worked up over this, that, and the other thing? And I think the same at wrestling. At the end of the day, it's a spectacle, but people like to suspend their disbelief. So I do know a lot of people are kind of getting Kansas City Chiefs treatment here, where it's like, oh my gosh, if I see this one more time, it's going to be the last time I watch the show. So yeah, I have a feeling it's a swerve to throw people off. The Rock's, again, they know wrestling is so much on the internet now. 10 years ago, even though it was, you could get away with this kind of stuff. Now you almost have to book for the internet. You have to book and then know, okay, the internet's going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And I think that's what they're doing. So I didn't want to go too long into it, but I wanted to explain kind of the backstory of Rocky here, Dwayne, the backstory of Cody and CM Punk, and how this all is too full circle. I mean, it's basically a meme now where everybody is just quoting CM Punk from that comment when he said the fact Dwayne's in the main event and I'm not makes me sick. Again, like 13 years ago. So it'd be very, very interesting, in my opinion, if they went ahead and just pulled the trigger. I could be wrong, but since I didn't see one person, usually again, since I don't typically cover wrestling, I try and cover the Vegas aspect. This could, again, have a nice Vegas aspect to it. We'll have to see. Ironically, or I guess fittingly, their next week, I think it's like the WrestleMania like getting ready, the prelude is going to be in Vegas. But I wanted to cover this because if there's something I don't see anybody talking about, like with Vince, nobody was really talking about how convenient it was that The Rock just got sued for these same things, and that Epstein list came out, and now all of a sudden, now they care about trafficking. With Andrew Tate and Vince McMahon, they never cared with Epstein. They never cared with Sound of Freedom coming out. They tried to censor the movie. So I always look for those kind of things. So it's very, very peculiar timing. But yeah, I think the whole thing's a swerve, and I think we're going to get what we expected, but they want to give us a little bit of doubt here where people will watch for the next couple months just to see what are we going to get. Is this really what we're going to get? What's The Rock's reason? What's this? What's that? And that's just what I think they do. So take care and happy earnings.